Charlotte was a resolute silhouette on the gray path. Her black coat flared sharply from her small waist, short-cut raven hair raised in small tufts in the prevailing wind. She had dropped her battered leather case beside her. The pair of them frozen indefinitely before the bleak fortress before them. Linton's school for wayward girls. For Nellie, it was the best she could now do for her daughter, including withholding parts of her own history, her own blood. She turned her battered Volkswagen down the ill-used road back to civilization and did not look back. Dear Mama, that day you left me there on the path, I had never felt so at home. The windswept heath and grey rock, I found a vast improvement on the cultured mutations people force on their homescapes. The cold stone and grey sky are perfect reflections of my soul. Thank you. Miss Heath asked me directly why I was there. Shouldn't she have known? I was sure I arrived with a documented history of my failure to socialize, my tendency to cruelty, my disconnection from those around me. These I did not see myself as problems, I still do not. I am not fond of others, so why should I pretend? I killed the cat, I said. How did you kill the cat? I squeezed it around its neck until it stopped fighting. Why did you do this? I was fascinated. I would like to do this to Toby, so I experimented. Blunt honesty is something I have never had an issue with. Who is Toby? Toby sat next to me in class. He called me witch. He drew on my work. He was very annoying. How did you feel about your experiment? I was disappointed I killed the cat. It was a good cat, Mother was fond of it. But it made me realize that doing this to Toby would be very satisfying. After our chat, she led me upstairs to a dismal passage that ran the length of the mansion. Was it grand once? The chandeliers and worn remains of a richly patterned runner suggested it may have been. More concerning to me now was who cleaned this place. Cobwebs hung in dust-laden drifts, mold spores assailed my nostrils. I felt she wished to lead me further, but one door asked me to stop. That one called for me. Miss Heath shrugged her shoulders. They are all the same and only 7 of you here. She rattled through her fat keychain citing of some sort of identifier until she found the right one. It is a room refreshingly devoid of frills. A simple bed lay beneath a small window. Against the wall, a plain oak table laden with age served as the key feature. I laid my hand upon it and felt a thrill of time and history resonate from its depths. It was this, not the room, that called me. Miss Heath recoiled. I think it was because I smiled. So I smiled wider. How interesting a smile feels. Was it my first? I am not sure. Dinner is at 6 p.m. sharp, downstairs to your left. A barked imperative. And she was gone. I arrived at dinner at 6:05. There sat 6 girls, 2 teachers, and a pale man whom I was to learn would be my counselor. Lily Linton, they call him. We are meant to sit at a new place each evening, however he only barks at us to move if we raise a voice. Or try and stab each other. Yes, Linton is also the name of the manor. It seems he is of the blood of its original occupants. Suitable blood to soak the mahogany floors. I ignored Linton's reproof at my lateness. It was my peers I wished to assess. In Tess I immediately saw my like. This did not mean we would get on. Martha is quite mad, her eyes looked as to other worlds. I soon learned that she rarely spoke, but it was good to keep all sharp items clear of her reach. Clara and Betsy were rosy-cheeked and chatty. They offered instant welcome and a seat beside them. I ignored them, registering their flash of eye contact and its intended threat to myself. Harriet stared at me until hunger overcame her. She does not belong here. She has anger issues. These can be solved. Bella was like Martha on one day, quite feral. But the next would chat and giggle with Clara and Betsy. Then there was Cat. Cat sits at the same spot each day, in the middle of our table. She may have been a chunk of stone of the mansion itself, topped by black hair that sat in thick clumps. Hacked at but never brushed. She had a face that on looking at you instantly recognized bully, and eyes that determine that this girl is deranged and there is no changing this state. She would have a lot of blood. We have lessons for the large part of each day. Few of us, with the exception of Cat, struggle with the lessons. We attend counseling. Bar the odd incident, we are dutiful. We are good, most of us, at doing what we need to do. Cat likes to snatch food. Shout low-grade abuse. Answer back when there is nothing to answer back to. Occasionally, a girl will respond in similar crudity, or try to stab her with the nearest vaguely pointy object. She is an ox. A waste of time, but, in a way, she is a break in monotony that even for me can become an irritation. I never answer back, and have no urge to strangle her. I have new visions. Linton is happy with me. He thinks I have a friend. To have a friend is apparently a cure, Tess and I sit together consistently. He does not notice that we do not engage with each other, and that this is the one reason we stay close. We are the same. Linton likes her. She has hair of pale urine and skin like snow before that urine hits it. I imagine how his pale eyes would bulge if a sharp object were to pierce his heart. I cannot decide if I feel protection for her, or a sense of pleasure in justification at Linton's looming ill fate. Feelings are too odd, better put aside. What is important is that I am not alone in my room. My bed sits undisturbed. I sleep each night with my head on my desk. On the ancient oak. It teaches me. The desk gifts a clarity of dreams I have never known. Woman in a forest of oak around a fire. Women drenched in blood, so much blood. I reached for it, but it eluded me. The oak showed me faces, it showed me witches. It showed me grandmama. It showed me you. I know now. Toby was right. It showed me all its secrets. Why this school, mother? Tess was not my fault. I would have spared Tess. Tess made her own decision. Cat thought it was amusing, a sideshow. The girls clapped in delight at Cat's rendition of the event. We were sent to our rooms early. I felt something, mother. A coldness. I know I have always been cold, but this was different. I also felt purpose. I gave my purpose to the oak, and the oak gave me a splinter of itself. Not just a splinter of oak, a splinter of ages, a splinter of a tree that had been present in ancient rituals. A splinter of my own blood heritage. I shall see you very soon, mother. Regards. Charlotte. The Volkswagen backfired to a halt, sending resting birds into a flurry of panic. Totally unflurried, Charlotte stood waiting on the gray path. Her leather bag on one hand, a blood-stained shaft of oak in her other. It would be a week hence that Nellie would read her letter. An ancient ill was resolved. Her daughter had found herself. She grabs her cheeks and holds them hostage in her bloody fingers, her nails sliding down like blades. She screams gleefully, laughs, and slaps her legs raw. Her cheeks now have blood marks on them. Fire. Covered in the fire. Red, bloody fire. Blood vessels burst open in her legs and blood rushes to the surface of her pale skin. What a great friend, she screams, banging her fists against the icy cement floor. Red, yellow, and blue bruises appear where her fists hit the ground. No answer, and everything is silent. Still. Amaline nods and a loud, raspy sound erupts from her cracked lips. Didn't answer me, she says to the air, turning around. Nobody responds. Now he shuts up. He spoke every second of the day. He wants me to come. Red walls spin around her, she stands up too quickly for her liking. Her vision gets cloudy and static like snow blinds her. She stumbles on one leg until her vision returns to normal and she walks toward the door of her room. Her blister-covered feet lead her, she has no control of herself as she nears the door. Amaline grimaces, coming close to the door. Her nails claw at her palms, and her hands are curled into fists. She passes right through the door. The building is silent, the only noise is the sound of cockroaches shuffling on the floor. Amaline walks down the hallway, lights flickering above her head. Glass shatters with every step she takes, and it acts like confetti, showering over her. Blood draws from where the glass hits and it drips down her face. Red. Deep red. Everything is red, covered in blood. The blood drips into Amaline's mouth and she grins, licking it away. More blood comes, dripping down on her teeth. She bangs on every wall, door, and window, waiting for a response. Something. She turns and sees a small girl staring at her with wide eyes. Amaline walks towards the girl, her face expressionless, not revealing anything. She advances closer to the girl, walking in small steps. Please, the girl yells, her eyes wide. Amaline stands in front of the girl. Snap. With one hand, she reaches out and snaps her neck in half. A moan comes out of the girl's mouth, along with a pool of dark red liquid. Amaline, still holding the girl's body and head, stumbles back to her room. Red is all around. Blood, dripping, dripping, slipping down more and more. She forgets. Bodies and heads surround her in a circle, all with snapped necks and wide eyes. She sits in the middle of it all, smiling a small, innocent smile. The environment is like a sinister peacefulness. Her mind is cleared. She forgets. Every day she laughs her honey-like laugh. Every day, she speaks to people who aren't there. Every day, she walks toward the door. Every day she grimaces. Every day, glass breaks. Every day another neck is snapped. She's trapped. She has no clue. Just let me help you, a man pleads, holding his hands together above his head. He's on his knees, begging, bartering for his life. Amaline stops and looks at the man. She walks towards him and bends down to his level. The man stares at her, his eyes wide. His breath catches. Amaline cocks her head at the man, her expressionless face staring deep into him. Please, a whisper comes from the man's lips, and he reaches out to brush Amaline's hair back. She dodges his touch and kicks him across the room. His back hits the wall, and he coughs up blood. Please, he repeats, his hand on his chest, as if it's the only thing holding him up. His breaths sound more like wheezes and gasps as he watches Amaline come closer to him. She grabs him by the throat and drags him to the red room. Snap. Dead. Neck after neck, head after head. She's looking for someone who wronged her. Someone she trusts. They did this to her. But she can't, she forgives them. She always will. Yet she will always hate them and hate what they did to her. She doesn't know what to do, because they don't come back. Countless bodies piled on top of each other, filling the red room. The people who know her die. She has nobody. Nobody who knows her. Slowly, she begins to fade. Her eyes are gone, now just holes in her head. Huge, gaping holes. Her lips wither away, and soon she doesn't have a face at all. She's nothing more than a faceless girl who wanders around the building. People keep coming. Suicidal, normal, insane, all dead. Heads snap off. Choked to death. Thrown. Concussions. Bleeding inside. Dead. Blood coats every surface of the room. The floor is covered in bodies. Yet she doesn't remember. Everything is gone. Her feet have blisters from being dragged across the rug floor of the hallway countless times. She's waiting. Waiting for her lover. She had awaited his arrival for days, weeks, months, now. Wanting to drag him by the hand down the hallway and ruffle his hair like she did every single day. Emmeline remembered none of it. None of the killing, wandering around, nothing. In between the 3 gaping holes in her head, nothing showed. Just pale holes in an albino head. Even the sight of her makes people scream and beg for mercy. She hates that. You didn't give me mercy when you killed me. She's torn between forgiving or raging. So she picks the latter option, not wanting to be seen as weak. Please, I have dash. Snap. People plead with her, try everything they can. Bringing her roses, sprinkling her with holy water, cutting her neck off. Dead. Emmeline's neck grows back almost instantaneously, but the other necks, well, not really. Neck after neck, head after head. She sits alone, wallowing in her own loneliness, not knowing she creates it. Red covers their pale flesh, dripping, down, down, never stopping. She gets more depressed each day, truly believing her lover is gone. Neck after neck, head after head. It becomes clearer. Emmeline laughs loudly, the holes in her head wider. Her laughs turn into moans of despair, which turn into screams of agony. Loneliness fills Emmeline to the brim, and she hates it. She hates that feeling. It is devastating, and she knows she has people. They are all around her. Still laughing, her mouth wide open, she rubs her bloody, dirt-covered hands together, reaches up, and gently places them around her own neck. Snap. It doesn't matter. Part 1. Hey, it's a garlic fest. It is clear Joseph was not happy with the overwhelming flavor of the extra garlic in his dinner. He tried a little bread, a little salad in trepidation, yummy. Even the salad is garlicky, now the sarcasm is evident in his smile and in his intonation. Well, like it or not, I'm doing the garlic thing, Sarah said defensively. I am not all superstitious, but a little garlic and a few good spells wouldn't harm. You remember what those people said? What if there is something called unrequited souls? She sounded confident that she isn't superstitious. Did you seriously believe those people? Come on, you are scaring the children, and this food. Joseph looked at the food in annoyance, probably contemplating if he should drive to the chip shop. Mom says people believe in silly things, said the little boy, concentrating on the plate, mostly moving his fork around the food. Now Alvin, your mom should meet our mother. Joseph looked at Daniel humorously, his droll eyes sparkled and he winked at Daniel. Daniel grinned at Dad, sharing the humor, and promptly retreated, looking at Mom's face that said, "So you are taking his side again?" Daniel looked at his friend beside him at the dining table to share the humor, but he was still concentrating on the plate of food, moving his fork. Daya, Daniel's older sister, pressed her lips, trying to hold a loud laughter, and shared a discreet smirk with Dad. She obviously didn't believe in the garlic factor. While the cynicism at the dining table was not discreet, Sarah knew she was overreacting with what the people said about the house being haunted by the souls of the Hat family. They said the house didn't get sold because people believe the Hats still live here. Reflecting on it, she realized it really was silly of her to believe in such things. "Fine," she said, "extra garlic is off the menu then." "And from the front door?" Daya asked sarcastically. "Yes, off the front door." "And from the hallway, from the living room, from my lunchbox?" Daya continued sarcastically. "That's enough," Joseph interrupted Daya, feeling that Sarah might be feeling a little bullied by them by now. He grabbed her hand. "We are just saying, these are just tales, let's relax, right?" "I know, they just got to me." "I don't know why people say things like that." Sarah is now annoyed at the people of the village for implanting these superstitions in her. "Actually, I'm glad they keep saying things like these to the visitors. Think about it, how else would you have found a mansion like this in 1995? Joseph tried to show the positive side of having neighbors with strange beliefs. "Isn't this what you have always wanted? A gorgeous country house in Warwickshire with acres of land? Perhaps having weird neighbor was our destiny, right?" Joseph laughed at the conclusion he just came up with. Sarah's dreams resonated with her. "You are right, it was my fantasy. It is such a beautiful place. I can't believe we got this in this price. I was just so overwhelmed. I'm just going to stop worrying about these silly stories. I mean, the Hat lived here in the 17th century. Sarah mocked herself. "Yeah, the Hat are probably bored by now," Daniels laughed. His friend rolled his eyes and joined the laughter. "You think they would be?" "Yeah, they must be by now." Sarah joined them with a slight embarrassment. "I'll spend the weekend with you, Mom, and you can show me how to do the chutneys and jams you said you wanted to." Daya quickly glanced at her dad and found him winking at her with approval. Sarah looked overwhelmed with happiness with such changes of plans the party girl just made. Joseph cast his gaze of contentment on his wife and daughter. "Perhaps this is what she needs. She has been feeling lonely lately," he contemplated. Now that all was sorted, Joseph could go through the garlic fest for tonight. A spooky growling noise interrupted the short silence at the table. They all looked towards the living room door. A pair of glossy, scorching eyes was looking at them, like a couple of transparent marbles sitting in front of a set of headlights. "I don't know what's with Socrates, he wouldn't come in the dining room. And I've even put some meat on his bowl." Daya indicated at Socrates's food bowl on the floor. "He has been quite aggressive this evening," Sarah observed. "Perhaps it is the garlic," trotted Alvin. Everyone burst into laughter. Socrates seemed highly offended. He fluffed up. Piloerection made him look double the size. He was clearly not bemused. Part 2. Daya joined her mum that Saturday morning. She knew this would make Mum really happy. Sarah asked Daya to get the glass jars she washed, dried, and left in the pantry. She was looking forward to making chutneys and jams together. She may involve Daniel too. Sarah heard a loud shattering noise from the pantry. She ran to check. It was obvious Daya dropped the jars. Joseph and Daniel, who heard the noise from the yard, ran to the pantry too. They were playing soldiers. Alvin just joined them. "It's all right, my love," said Sarah, looking at Daya sitting on the floor in the midst of the broken glasses. She was glaring at them with vacuous glacial eyes. Her body was void of any motion. "It's okay, honey. it was just an accident, Joseph comforted as he planned to slowly lug her out of the situation. She was obviously in a shock. Immobile, sat frozen, she slowly started to open her mouth, her stony eyes begun to widen. Sarah and Daniel screeched in horror. Daya's mouth was filled with crushed sparkling glasses. Joseph was terrified in horror. "Honey, don't swallow anything, just stay there," said Joseph and sat beside Daya. He asked Sarah to hold her mouth open as he carefully took the glasses out of her mouth, one by one, making sure they don't cut her inside. "It's okay, Daya, don't swallow," a petrified but brave Daniel kept prompting Daya. Alvin was at the doorway, with a deadpan expression. It was shocking for both children. That evening Daya said she saw a lady pushing the jars on the floor, and she held her mouth open and put the glasses in her mouth. "You were hallucinating," Joseph explained, hugging her in the hospital bed. "You were in shock and you were really scared. But I didn't want to drop the jars." "I know, my love." Sarah hugged her, feeling so relieved that she was okay. Part 3. Joseph loved photography, and it was a fine day for it. The house had opulent opportunity to take great photographs. Such unadulterated nature, if only these old trees could talk, he wondered. Alvin and Daniel were playing. Socrates was looking at them with a thumping tail. Joseph walked around and took lots of pictures. He walked far beyond the play area in the back of the manor house, to the graveyard. He thought it was just a tale by the crazy villagers, but he found 3 tombstones almost buried in the ground, covered in leaves. How extraordinary, he thought. He coarsely moved some leaves and took a few photos. He walked back to check on the boys. He took photos of them playing together. Alvin was still struggling to make friends with Socrates. He kept trying to embrace the cat, but the cat kept wiggling himself out, hissing and huffing. "He will get used to you." Daniel wanted to give some hope to the frustrated Alvin. "Don't go far, boys," Joseph instructed the boys and went inside. Socrates followed him to the kitchen. Sarah was prepping the lunch. Daya plated some food for Socrates. "We like eating alone these days," she mocked at the cat's recent changes of behavior. They suddenly heard Daniel yelping, "Mummy." They all ran outside the kitchen, including Socrates. They saw Alvin knocking on a tree trunk, shrieking, trembling, "Are you all right?" They could not see Daniel anywhere or hear him. Sarah and Daya started to shout out his name. They were howling, not knowing what's happening. They feared their worst nightmare. Joseph gently held Alvin's shoulders and turned him towards him and calmly asked, "Son, what happened? Tell me, where is Dan?" Alvin was shaking. "I didn't want it to happen. I didn't wish it." He was shaking with fear and penitence. "We were climbing trees. Dan climbed even higher, and then..." He looked up and pointed at the top of the tree. "Then what happened?" "Well, I didn't stop him." Daniel looked at Joseph. "He fell inside." He pointed at the tree. Joseph immediately worked out the tree was hollow. There was hope, no matter how tall the tree was, how far Daniel had fallen. He called the fire brigade, who located Daniel at the bottom of the trunk. They had to cut the top of the tree and rescue a very injured little boy. Daniel broke his collarbones and his left arm. The doctor told them they were extremely lucky that Daniel was alive. It seemed Daniel would be spending the summer in bandages. When Daniel gained consciousness, he remembered a man asked him to climb up the old tree trunk, and he pushed him to the hole. Joseph reassured him that it was a nightmare. That evening Sarah told Joseph that she feels this place is unholy. "I was going to lose both of my children, can't you see? And they are having nightmares." Joseph consoled Sarah. Hugging her, he said they were accidents, that they were getting used to with the new place. Alvin came to visit Daniel when he returned home. "I didn't mean for it to happen," said Alvin with remorse. Sarah hugged Alvin. "It was an accident. You didn't do anything wrong. Daniel is my friend." "We know, Alvin," said Joseph kindly. Part 4. Sarah wondered how to cheer Daniel up. He looked sad, stuck inside with this shoulder-to-shoulder bandage to fix his collarbones. She decided to fix him a treat and wondered what else to do. "You know how you two always read about old toys and things?" Sarah asked Joseph while mixing a cake batter for Daniel. "What about that?" Joseph was drawing a design for his next job on the kitchen table using his pencils and sketch paper. "Why don't you make one of those toys you two history buffs look at? It could be exciting for Dan to see it in real life." Sarah sounded pleased with the new idea. So was Joseph. "Hey, that's a great idea, actually." "Well done." Joseph said it with a mock disbelief. Joseph was an artisan craftsman. He has been designing and making boats for many years. He knew he could copy a toy from the history book easily. Sarah put the cake in the oven. "Where did my icing bags go?" She wondered loudly and started opening the cabinets one after another. A sudden cry of horror made Joseph turn around in utter shock. Sarah was howling in horror. There was blood dripping down her forehead. She was staring at her right hand, blood oozing out of the deep cut. A Ceaseless was on the floor covered in blood. Sarah was continuously screaming and shaking. Dia ran to the kitchen to check what had happened. "I have to take your mother to the hospital. Watch your brother." Joseph didn't have much time to explain or figure out what just happened. He wrapped Sarah's cut with the kitchen cloth and hauled her to the car. "We'll be in the hospital soon, just hold on." Joseph's voice shook a little. Part 5. Sarah had to have few sticks on her forehead and on her palm and arm. She was still shaking. "That knife, it is so old. How did it get there?" Sarah looked at Joseph with horror and whispered, "I saw them, like Dan did. The woman was stabbing me. But I think it was a child, pushed the knife out of her hand and it fell. I think she wanted to kill me." Sarah paused to breath, whimpering, shivering. "How did that knife get to my cupboard?" The nurse standing by looked at Joseph with question marks. Joseph felt uncomfortable and a little alarmed for the first time. "It's a very old house. The knife must have been there for ages. It took you by a surprise and you were just really terrified. We see things when we are scared." Joseph said it as if he was trying to comfort himself. Part 6. Joseph decided to clear the place up a little bit. "Just an old house. It was an accident. I should have thought about this ahead and look for all the little things. Who knows what else is hiding in the house?" Joseph blamed himself. He decided to surprise Daniel with a toy like Sarah advised. Mother and son both were resting in their beds. Joseph asked Dia to keep an eye on them. Joseph worked hours and created the cutest spin-top toy set following the 17th century designs. He could tell Daniel was really impressed. Alvin came to play with him like he did every afternoon. They both looked busy with the toys. "Some things never go old," Joseph told Sarah in accomplishment. Sarah looked happy and smiled for the first time after returning from the hospital. "That's that then," thought Joseph. "Let's stay safe from now." Part 7. That weekend Joseph decided to spend the time in the workhouse. The outer house was converted into Joseph's crafts area where he will be building his boats. He started to concentrate on his work but interrupted by Dia running in, screaming frantically, "Dad, Dan has gone crazy." She kept pointing at the house. "Why? What happened?" Dia couldn't say anything. She started to run back in the house. Joseph followed him. Joseph ran upstairs to Dan's room. Sarah was trying to stop a historical Dan. Socrates was angry, his tail was up lashing. Daniel was frantically hitting himself with the spinning tops, shouting, "These are not your toys." Sarah was trying to stop him from hitting himself. Daniel's face was red with marks and his lips were bleeding already. Joseph embraced Daniel, opened his fists with force and took the spinning toys out of his grips and threw them on the floor. Socrates hissed at the direction of the spinning tops rolling on the floor. It's okay," Joseph kept rocking Daniel. Dia and Sarah were sobbing, not knowing what was happening. "I felt someone told me to tell you to make those toys, like a man told me you should make them for his children," Sarah was sniveling. Later in the afternoon, when Daniel calmed down, Alvin was keeping him busy and Dia was watching them. Sarah was adamant. "I don't care if we lose money. I want to leave this house. I feel something, like something is really wrong in this house. I want to go back to London." Joseph knew it was the final decision. Part 8. Daniel and Alvin had a sad goodbye. They were good friends. "Alvin, I'll see you again." "Sarah, maybe, sweetheart." "Joseph, who knows?" They regretted not meeting his parents. Part 9. 2020. 32-year-old Daniel decided to stay with his parents in the lockdown. Daniel felt like a little kid again, doing things with Dad. They decided to tidy up the storage because Sarah told them to. They started coming across things as they were opening all the big and little boxes. "Dad, look," Daniel showed an envelope labeled "Negatives from the Manor House." "They must be the old photos I never developed. Your mom didn't want anything to do with that house. I must have put them away." Joseph took digital photos these days, so he took them to a developing studio. They did some research on the old house at the library and printed out an article on the manor house. Daniel and Joseph started looking at the photos and the article when they returned back to the garage. "Hey, look, I am playing in the backyard with Socrates. I miss that cat, he was always so angry in that house." Daniel remembered. "Yeah, you used to play with that little boy. What was his name again?" Alvin remembered Daniel. "He kept telling me I don't want you to leave." Daniel remembered. He was a humble boy. Joseph was concentrating on the article. "Well, Lord Calder and Luella Hatt died with their child in scarlet fever. They were quarantined in the manor house in their last days." "How sad," said Joseph. Joseph started concentrating on the photograph of the graves when suddenly his eyes followed Daniel's icy gaze. They were both frozen, looking at a photo Daniel was holding. They then started flipping through the photographs frenziedly. Socrates looked struggling in the photographs, as if he was trying to free himself. He managed to look straight at the camera in one photo when being held. It was as if he was trying to tell something to Joseph, except that it looked like he was sitting in the air. Or he was struggling with an invisible force. He was held above from the ground, as if floating. "Dad!" Daniel shrieked under his breath. "What does it say on the child's grave?" Joseph picked up the photograph with the third headstone and examined closely. He read out the epitaph. "Alvin James Hatt, 1693 to 1700. You are now as once was I. You will travel far as I say goodbye. Prepare to take a forever vow. Then you will be what I am now."